So today we'll start our lesson in chapter 11, which is about feudalism and the Middle Ages. Of course, you will need your online book or the printed textbook if you want to use that. Go to LODA USD website and launch Clever. And from Clever, you need to log in with your world history book using your student account and the same password that you use for your Chromebooks. From the left side, go to Unit 5, Medieval, Renaissance, and the Revolutionary Europe, pages 286 to 403. But before we dive in, let's take a look at this on-location video presentation by Maurizio Serrazzini of Cultural Heritage Engineer in pages 286 to 287.
I'm not supposed to be here. If I were just a regular engineer, I wouldn't be dealing with artworks, with cultural heritage. First, I wanted to become an engineer. At the same time, I had another passion, which was art history. I guess because I was born in Florence, maybe because I always grew up in the city, maybe because I played soccer and volleyball just around the workshop of Leonardo da Vinci. I always had such a passion, and the idea to go and discover or help discovering a great masterpiece, perhaps the greatest masterpiece of Leonardo da Vinci, and that's how I finally can blend together the two loves that I always had, science and art history. The reason why I'm still very interested by the mystery of the Battle of Anghiari and interested in continuing the search, it's not just for the reason of discovering what the Battle of Anghiari was at that time, that is considered the school of the world, the highest form of art ever achieved by mankind. And this was said and written by the contemporaries of Leonardo at that time, here. We should be aware that a masterpiece of this huge importance could not simply be ruled out saying, well, it had to be destroyed or it's lost and that's it. Such masterpiece at least is worth to be looked for, to be searched for. Just try to imagine what will mean to uncover it, to discover it and uncover it. It will mean to show to the world today such a tremendous example of beauty, harmony, achievement, what we consider the highest genius of the past. I say the blessing of the work I'm doing is that it gives me this privilege to be associated, to be so close to the work of art. There is way much more than just looking at the surface. There's a whole story, there's a whole world. It's way much more fascinating than just staring something that is 5 centuries old. And the surface you're looking, by the way, has changed considerably. And so I would like to say to these people, wait, science can show you way much more than just standing there and not just being so passive when they go and look at in a museum at all these masterpieces.
Okay, now let's go to chapter 11. It is in pages 292 to 293. You'll see that in this page is the iconic symbol of Europe during the Middle Ages. Kings and nobles built fortified walls like this to keep invaders out. So some castles like this one in England were surrounded by a moat to discourage the enemy from attacking the castle. In this chapter, you will learn key vocabs, names, and places such as chivalry, feudalism, manor system, Charlemagne, Franks, the Middle Ages, of course, the bubonic plague, Crusades, 100 Years' War, Inquisition, Joan of Arc, etc. Now let's go to section 1 feudalism develops, and in lesson 1, medieval Europe, which is in pages 294 to 295. The objective of this lesson is to identify how Western Europe changed after Rome fell. And the chapter's essential question is, how did Europe change during the Middle Ages? Well, to provide you with additional background, during the medieval period or the Middle Ages, Germanic tribes created their own small kingdoms and ruled Europe. The Franks settled in what is now France. There's this guy named Clovis who started taking over the Frankish tribes when he was just 16. He ruled the kingdom for 30 years, making it strong militarily, converting his subjects to Christianity. Of course, there's a story behind his conversion and reasons why he was converted. Other tribes such as the Visigoths and the Ostrogoths also flourished during this time. So the Visigoths sacked Rome and put an end to the Western Roman Empire. The Visigoths eventually settled in what is now Spain. The Ostrogoths under Theodoric the Great took over to what is now known as Italy. The Germanic tribes that caused the fall of the Western Roman Empire in AD 476 didn't just devastate towns and kill many of their inhabitants. They destroyed a way of life. For 100 years, the Roman Empire had united much of Europe. With the empire no longer in control, now what? Could well have been the question on almost everyone's mind. So the main idea of this lesson is, after Rome fell, Western Europe underwent many political and cultural changes. After the fall of Rome is medieval. It comes from the Latin words medium, meaning middle, and aevum, meaning age. This era, or Middle Ages, lasted from about 500 to 1450 in Western Europe. After Rome fell, Germanic leaders seized power, and much of the region became divided into small kingdoms that were almost constantly at war. As a result of this widespread warfare, one of the greatest challenges facing leaders was to keep their people safe and secure. It was indeed a violent time, yet many kingdoms thrived. Abundant forest land provided wood for building, and mountains containing a wealth of minerals, particularly iron, allowed Germanic peoples to make all their weapons they need to fight their foes. In addition, Western Europe's long coastline and major rivers gave people access to the sea and plentiful supplies of fish. Now let's take a look at the map of Europe during 500 AD. These are the dominant kingdoms during this time. From the left, you'll see the kingdom of the Visigoths, now known as Spain. The kingdom of the Franks, which is now known as France. The Ostrogoths took what is now Italy. And of course, the Eastern Roman Empire still exists at this point. And towards south is the kingdom of the Vandals. So the point that I'm trying to say here is, after the fall of Rome, Europe was divided into smaller kingdoms. Geographically, the region's many waterways offered ideal routes and networks for trading. However, unlike the Romans, the Germanic peoples who migrated to Western Europe were not interested in trade. The tribes that settled in Roman lands in early part of the Middle Ages preferred their own traditions to the Roman ways. For example, the Franks. They were able to unite powerful kingdoms but didn't create large centralized governments or even write down their laws as the Romans had. Instead, the people obeyed the unwritten rules and traditions of their king. It is the exact opposite of the Roman system of government. So they lived in small villages and they worked the land and tended their herds. The trade began to disappear in the region, so did many cities. So just about the only force that helped unite Western Europe in early Middle Ages was Christianity, which survived the fall of Rome. Before 500s, most Germanic peoples, including the Angles, the Jutes, and the Saxons, practiced their traditional religions and worshiped many gods. They are pagans. After the Germanic leaders came to power, however, many of them converted or changed their religion to Christianity. Well, the first leader to be converted was Clovis, which I mentioned a while ago, who ruled the Franks. After Clovis defeated the Roman Gaul, now France, in 486, he went to conquer other weaker kingdoms as well. When he converted to Christianity, many of his subjects did too. As a result of his conversion and other rulers, Christianity spread and increased in influence. Even though the Western Roman Empire had disappeared, the city of Rome itself retained a certain amount of power and strength. It remained the home of the Pope as well as the center of Christianity. Now let's go to the review and assess questions. The first one, reading check. How did government change in Western Europe after the fall of Rome? Number 2, interpret maps. Which of the 6 kingdoms in the map that I showed a while ago might have been most exposed to attacks from other kingdoms? Explain why. Maybe 2 sentences. And finally, number 3, compare and contrast. How did Western European culture in the early Middle Ages differ from culture during the Roman Empire? That's our Chapter 11 Introduction and Section 1.1 Medieval Europe, pages 294 to 295. Now go back to Google Classroom and go ahead, open the Review and Assess assignment for Chapter 11 and answer the questions for Section 1.1. I changed the format of the Review and Assess assignments, but the contents, the questions, the information that you need to put are just the same. On the top left, the lesson number, and then you will fill up with your last name, first name, class period, and date. And of course, you will also look for the definition of the key vocabs that I put on the left side, and you will put the definition on the right side inside the box. You will also need to write the title of the lesson before you answer the actual review and assess questions. And you will put the title here inside this blue box right here. And finally, the review and assess questions, and put your answer inside the box on the right side of the slide. Minimum of at least 3 sentences. And this will be enough for you to get full credit. Well, of course, given that you have the right answers to these questions.